Vinyl hasn't gone away despite all the digital innovations. If anything, it's having this resurgence.
Yeah, and you do, you want to form a relationship with those artists. It's great that you can actually reach out to people personally on social media these days.
And even going back to the vinyl thing, I think certainly during COVID and the lockdown, it was such a scary time for artists.
Broken about the music industry today. In the intro, I said there's kind of this detachment, the kind of impact of streaming has kind of broken the relationship that people have with music. Mark, for you, how's the music business changed? You've obviously been around for a few cycles now. How's the economics of touring and streaming, and how's all that changed for you and the people, your peers?
Well, I mean, the last 20 plus years have seen so many changes. I mean, we were making records during the whole Napster thing. We originally made our music and released our music on vinyl. So we went from sort of vinyl and tape through to CDs, through to MP3s, through to buying MP3s, through to streaming. So I've kind of come through the whole thing, and we've certainly seen over the years the relationship with fans has kind of dwindled. I think a lot of, particularly the young people. I mean, my peers, or like people my age, have kind of still, I went out shopping the other day, looking for vinyl and all that sort of stuff with a mate of mine who was my age that I went to university with. But certainly from like the new fans, because I am making new music and trying to kind of sort of stay up to date. It's just a very, very different relationship. I mean, they do expect it for nothing. Even artists I work with now, when we finish a track, they just kind of sort of stick it up to stream, and I'm like, oh, hang on, we haven't talked about a deal yet. It's almost like the kind of, it's kind of almost like made for free. You expect it to kind of work for free, and then they put it out for free, and then they obviously kind of benefit from going out touring and doing gigs and I suppose kind of building up the social media numbers and doing, brand, kind of brand deals and all that sort of stuff, which is fine for the artist. But then obviously everyone else that's involved in making that record and pushing that record and promoting that record, we're relying on ridiculous, streaming numbers, and like a tiny amount of money sort of per stream. So it really has lost its, lost its value massively, considering it still takes, I've still got to run a recording studio. It still takes the money to actually make the music in the first place. That's not changed. It's become a bit easier, with technology, but you still need to invest in it, and that's almost become, the amount of time you see people saying, work for promotion or work for exposure. That's the classic, isn't it? We can do this, and you'll be working for exposure as opposed to actually money. So yeah, it is. It's almost completely different from back in the day, unrecognizable, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I hadn't thought about that actually. The idea that it's also changed the relationship between the artist, maybe the lead artist, and the rest of the production team, because as you say, maybe they can or think they can afford to just throw it up as a promotional tool, and they'll somehow monetize it through ticket sales or some brand endorsement or something else, but nobody else participates in that upstream value. They're kind of waiting for the downstream, right? And it's not coming. I think also you mentioned the idea of looking for vinyl again. And this is kind of what I was alluding to in the intro, this idea that, vinyl hasn't gone away despite all the digital innovations. If anything, it's having this resurgence. Mm-hmm. And, there's got to be a reason for that, right? For me, it demonstrates that people do want a relationship with music. They do want to collect music. Why do you think vinyl's survived, and what could that hint at in the context of NFTs?
For me, on this, it's as if the connection has been taken away from the person who purchases music. And for when I know when albums used to come out, I used to queue up outside at our price, and I'd go in, I'd buy one album, and it would come with artwork, it would come with a story, and I think that was taken away when everything went digital, because all of a sudden there was no booklets, there was no connections to that fans on that level. So you couldn't engage in music in the same way. And people didn't ask for that to be taken away. It was just stripped away and then music was force consumed. And I think that was the start of the issues.
Yeah, and Mark, I don't know if you want to build on that. Why do people still collect vinyl, and like what might that tell us about the role of NFTs as a object that you can own, that could be unique, that could have provenance?
I think exactly that. I hope that it's applicable to a younger audience. What worries me is that maybe the vinyl, the idea of owning something tangible when it comes to music, I'm hoping it's not a generational thing. I'm hoping that it is. That I haven't seen stats. So I'm hoping that younger people are wanting that artwork and wanting to buy into that. I'd love that to be the case. I do hope that's the case. Obviously, for kind of my generation, we still do. You want to feel ownership. It feels much better to own a piece of vinyl. I mean, not so much on CDs, bizarrely, but certainly kind of vinyl. Owning something and actually seeing something for the money you've spent, rather than just streaming stuff on the internet. I mean, the problem is it's like attention spans on the internet, because of a lot of the sort of social media platforms and stuff. People are just happy to sort of throw, quite often, I'm totally guilty of it. I'll have music on in the car and it'll just be like, iTunes create station or whatever, and I'll listen to a load of stuff I haven't listened before. But quite often it comes and goes, and if I hear it a few times, I might remember to take a note of who it is. But quite often it's just, it becomes sort of soundtrack to other stuff you're doing, rather than back in the day, like Matt said, the idea of actually queuing up, going to buy a piece of music and kind of enjoying it. I used to sit around a friend's house. He had like an amazing sound system, and we used to kind of play with the vinyl, and it was a big thing back then. Certainly for me, speaking from my perspective, I just like to, I like to feel that, for the money I've spent, that I own something, and also that the artist and everybody involved in the process is getting some kind of benefit from, and you do, you want to form a relationship with those artists. It's great that you can actually reach out to people personally on social media these days, but if you can't, even if you didn't have that, I think just investing, it feels like an investment, doesn't it, in a band, if you're buying a piece of vinyl or a t-shirt or merchandise or any of that sort of stuff, that there's a physical, like a tangible thing that you paid for.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, a really important point we're going to get to a little bit later, this idea of feeling that you're investing into a band and their career and their art through the purchase of something, a piece of merch, a ticket, or a digital LP. And I also like this idea of the kind of social component to music. And again, I'm really interested to think about how NFTs could potentially enhance that. But Ryan, how do you think the relationship between an artist and fans has changed now in the context of the web and digital?
I mean, it's certainly a lot more direct, obviously. And I guess, as fan clubs have become more a thing of the past, I mean, they used to be a huge thing. I guess your social platform kind of is that fan club now, but it just needs so much more, and even going back to the vinyl thing, I think certainly during COVID and the lockdown, it was such a scary time for artists, because I mean they didn't get to tour, they didn't get to do all that stuff. I mean, some of them couldn't even record, so they were looking for all these different things. And even vinyl now, the positive is that people want it, and we're seeing that people want it, but we've actually hit another problem now, where we're not able to get the vinyl created in time, and we're having such huge delays on album campaigns for the artists now, which is really hurting them. So I mean, if we can sort of find a way to make the NFT space feel tangible to this new generation, then that solves those issues as well. Then so I think that's a very big thing in being able to have that artist to fan relationship and try to eliminate a lot of these issues that we're going through at the moment, because there are a lot of them.